Part 2. Yeah, but that rap sheet's all bullshit, he insists. Most of those charges are phony. I've never thought of myself as a criminal. I don't work at it. I'm not greedy enough. Everything I do is natural because I need to. And then, after a moment, but I guess I'm pushing my luck, even if I'm not a criminal. Pretty soon they'll nail me for one of these goddamn things, and then it's goodbye Terry for a whole lot of years. I think it's about time I cut out. Went east, maybe to New York, or Australia. You know, I had a card in Actors Equity once. I lived in Hollywood. Hell, I can make it anywhere, even if I am a fuck-up. On another Saturday, he might have slept until 2 or 3 in the afternoon, then gone out again with a dozen or so of the brethren to find the Diablos and whip them down to jelly. But a Labor Day run is the biggest event on the Hells Angels calendar. It is the annual gathering of the whole outlaw clan, a massive 3-day drunk that nearly always results in some wild, free-swinging action and another rude shock for the squares. No angel would miss it for any reason except jail or crippling injury. The Labor Day run is the outlaws' answer to New Year's Eve. It is a time for sharing the wine jug, pummeling old friends, random fornication, and general full-dress madness. Depending on the weather and how many long-distance calls are made the week before, anywhere from 200 to 1,000 outlaws will show up, half of them already drunk by the time they get there. By 9 o'clock that morning, both Terry and Scraggs were on their feet. Vengeance on the Diablos could wait. Today, the run. Terry lit a cigarette, examined the bumps and welts on his body, then pulled on a pair of crusty Levi's, heavy black boots, no underwear, and a red t-shirt, smelling of old wine and human grease. Scraggs drank a beer while his wife heated water for instant coffee. The children had been put with relatives the night before. The sun was hot outside. Across the bay, San Francisco was still covered in a late lifting fog. The bikes were gassed and polished. All that remained was the gathering of any loose money or marijuana that might be lying around, lashing the sleeping bags to the bikes, and donning the infamous colors. In any gathering of Hell's Angels from 5 to a possible 150, there is no doubt who is running the show. Ralph "Sonny" Barger, the maximum leader, a 6-foot, 170-pound warehouseman from East Oakland, the coolest head in the lot, and a tough, quick-thinking dealer when any action starts. By turns, he is a fanatic, a philosopher, a brawler, a shrewd compromiser, and a final arbitrator. To the Oakland Angels, he is Ralph. Everybody else calls him Sonny. Although when the party gets wild and loose, he answers to names such as Prez, Papa, and Daddy. Barger's word goes unquestioned, although many of the others could take him in 2 minutes if it ever came to a fight. But it never does. He rarely raises his voice, except in a rumble with outsiders. Any dissenters in the ranks are handled quietly at the regular Friday night meetings, or they simply fade out of the picture and change their life pattern so as never again to cross paths with any group of angels. If the gathering at Tommy's was a little disorganized, it was because Sonny was serving time at Santa Rita in the rehabilitation center for possession of marijuana. With Sonny in jail, the others were keeping the action to a minimum, even though Tommy, in his quiet, disaffiliated sort of way, was running the show pretty well. At 26, he was a year younger than Barger. Blonde, clean-shaven, with a wife and 2 children, making $180 a week as a construction worker. He knew he was only filling in for the Prez, but he also knew that the Oakland Angels had to make a tough, full-strength appearance at the Labor Day run. Anything less would forfeit the spiritual leadership back to Southern California, to the San Bernardino, or Purdue chapter, the founding fathers, as it were, who started the whole thing in 1950 and issued all new charters for nearly 15 years. But mounting police pressure in the South was causing many Angels to seek refuge in the Bay Area. By 1965, Oakland was on its way to becoming the capital of the Hells Angels world. Prior to their ear-splitting departure, there was a lot of talk about the Diablos and what manner of lunacy or strange drug had caused them to commit such a sure fatal error as an attack on a lone angel. Yet this was a routine beef, postponed and forgotten as they moved onto the highway for an easy 2-hour run to Monterey. Footnote: within a month the Diablos had disbanded, terrorized by a series of stompings, beatings, and chain whippings. The Angels hunted them down one by one and did them in. Things like that don't happen very often, Terry explained later. Other clubs don't usually mess with us because when they do, that's the end of them. By noon, it was so hot that many of the riders had taken off their shirts and opened their black vests, so the colors flapping out behind them like capes, and the oncoming traffic could view their naked chests, for good or ill. The southbound lanes were crowded with taxpayers heading out for a Labor Day weekend that suddenly seemed tinged with horror as the Angel Band swept past. This animal crowd on big wheels, going somewhere public, all noise and hair and bust-out raping instincts. The temptation for many a motorist was to swing hard left with no warning and crush these arrogant scorpions. At San Jose, an hour south of Oakland, the formation was stopped by 2 state highway patrolmen, causing a traffic jam for 45 minutes at the junction of 17 and 101. Some people stopped their cars entirely just to watch. Others slowed to 10 or 15 miles an hour. As traffic piled up, there were vapor locks, boilovers, and minor collisions. They wrote tickets for everybody they could, said Terry. Things like seats too low, bars too high, no mirror, no handhold for the passenger. And like always, they checked us for old warrants, citations we never paid, and every other goddamn thing they could think of. But the traffic was really piling up, with people staring at us and all, and finally, by God, a highway patrol captain showed up and chewed those bastards good for creating a hazard, or whatever he called it. We had a big laugh, then we took off again. We get treated here, in Monterey, good. Most other places we get thrown out of town. Frenchie from Purdue talking to a reporter not many hours before the Angels were thrown out of town. End of part 2.